Hello my beautiful friends, it's Amanda here, and today we're going to talk about the newest palette from e.l.f. Cosmetics. It's their Rose Gold Sunset palette. When I first opened this palette, I immediately saw this half over here, these really warm red and orange, and I thought, is this palette going to be a dupe for the Urban Decay Naked Heat? A while back I did a video where I compared the e.l.f. Nude Rose Gold to the Urban Decay Naked 3 palette, and those palettes were very similar. The way they were laid out, the shades that were included in the palettes were incredibly similar, but as soon as I put this palette next to the Naked Heat palette, it became very apparent that these were not going to be dupes. While it's true that half of this palette has a very similar vibe, and some of these shades may be pretty close to the shades in the Naked Heat palette, this has a very different feel overall. For example, we're getting this more rosy toned mauve shade and this olive khaki green. So this will not be a comparison video. They're really not all that similar. Not any more so than any other palette with warm tone orange red shades in it. So we're gonna take a look at this Rose Gold Sunset palette. I'll give you product details, we'll do swatches, and I'll also show you how I created the eye look that I'm wearing today using this palette. This palette is retail priced at $10 US, and it is available on the e.l.f. website. I'm sure this is popping up in stores as well. The packaging is the exact same size and shape as their other 10-pan palettes in this style. The main difference that I've noticed packaging wise is that the name of the palette is actually printed on the front instead of the back. On the previous palettes, the front just had the e.l.f. logo. This is the Nude Rose Gold palette, and the name on this palette was printed on the back. So I do like this little packaging update. It's not a huge change, but I do find this to be a lot more convenient, so I really like this new detail. The outer packaging of the palette is a heavy-duty plastic, so it is very easy to wipe clean. It doesn't have that soft touch matte feel to it. And the lid is a locking clasp closure, so it is not magnetic. Inside, there's a decent sized mirror. This palette does not come with a brush or an applicator of any kind. Inside, there are 10 eyeshadow shades. 4 of these are matte and 6 are shimmery. Some of the shimmers are more of a satiny shimmer, and some are slightly more metallic. None of these have glitter, and none of them are very intensely foiled metallics. This Rose Gold Sunset palette contains 0.42 ounces of product, or 12 grams. We're gonna go ahead and do some swatches now. I'll be swatching on the back of my hand with no primer. I'll do both finger and brush swatches. Finger swatches will be on top, and then the brush swatches will be below. For my brush swatches, I'll be using this e.l.f. flat eyeshadow brush, and I'll clean off in between each shade using my Veramona color switch. Here's the first round of swatches from the palette, and these shades do not have names, so I'll just refer to them as first, second, third. You get the point. So the first shade is a very pale yellowy champagne shade, and this is one of the more satiny shimmers. Next is a soft rose gold, and I don't think it's translating on camera, but in person, this almost has a little bit of a pink shift to it. Very pretty shade here. Camera is not doing this one justice for sure. Next we have 2 mattes. Here's that rosier mid-tone mauve, and then a nice medium warm brown. And this is that olive green brown shade. I think this looks more brown in swatch, but in the pan and on my eye, I think more of that green comes through. But I'm very impressed with the brush swatch on this one, especially compared to these lighter shimmer shades. This is pretty nice looking swatch here. Here's the second half of the palette, and I think it's pretty obvious that the deeper shades in the palette perform a lot better in swatch. So we have 3 shimmer shades here. This is more of a true gold, bronzy gold, a bright orange. This is such a beautiful shade. And then another one of those satiny type shimmers in this red shade. And the last 2 shades are both mattes. We have a more red toned medium brown here, and then a dark brown that has almost a purplish vibe to it. And look how beautiful these matte shades swatch with a brush. They look almost like the finger swatches. Now that you've seen the swatches, let's go ahead and jump into the tutorial using this palette, and then I'll wrap up all my thoughts at the end. First things first, I'm gonna prime my eyes with my favorite eye base. It's the MAC Paint Pot in the shade Painterly. Then I quickly set that base using the NYX HD finishing powder for a nice smooth surface to work on. Next, I'm going to add my transition shade. I'm using this nice warm medium brown matte shadow. It's shade number 4 in the palette, and I'm just putting that all through my crease and on my outer lid as well. Then I'm gonna mix 9 and 10. Again, both matte shades from this palette. I'm keeping these darker shades away from my crease and packing them on closer to my lashes so that my look doesn't get more smoky than I want it to. Now for a little lower lash line work, I'm going back with that 4th shade in the palette and building that all along my lower lash line. Then on a pencil brush, mixing 9 and 10 and putting that just more towards the outer part of my lower lash line. Now it's time to add some shimmer. For my all over lid color, I'm taking that khaki green shade, shade number 5, and using my finger, I pack that all over my lid. And I wanted to add a little pop of this gold right in the center, so I just used a different finger and gently tapped that in. Of course, I need an inner corner highlight. It's my favorite part of my eye makeup, and I used this pale golden champagne shade on a detail brush and added that all around the inner part of my eye. Then I just curled my lashes and added some mascara. Then I finished my look off with some Tarteist Glossy Lip Paint in the shade Snap. Formula-wise, I'm pretty impressed with this palette. I do think that the shadows in this Rose Gold Sunset palette performed a little bit better than the Nude Rose Gold palette did. These shades just felt softer and easier to blend. Particularly the matte shades I was really impressed with in here. In my experience, shimmer shades just perform better and they're more impressive in swatch on the eye, but for these, I think the mattes were actually more of a standout than the shimmers because these matte shades just applied and blended so beautifully on the eye. I didn't have any trouble with them disappearing or getting muddied up. I felt that they were easy to work with and they ended up looking really great on the lids. Although I do want to point out that these shimmer shades really benefit from being applied with a dampened brush. I'm going to show you a clip here of the 2nd shade in the palette, that pale rose gold bronzy shade. It doesn't really show up that great in the brush swatch. When you see what it looks like with a dampened brush, it looks so completely different. It looks so silky and ultra metallic. So these shimmer shades really can knock your socks off if you apply them with a dampened brush. As far as the shade selection in here goes, I think they did a good job of throwing in some sort of curveballs. It's not a replica of the Naked Heat or the Toasted palette, which they easily could have done. So I am glad that they tried to mix it up a little bit shade-wise. Truth be told, if you are a makeup junkie and a palette lover, then you really aren't gonna get anything from this palette that you probably don't already have. Overall, this is what it is. It's a warm neutral palette. But I don't think that means that we should just discount this palette. There's a lot of use for something like this. There's definitely a need for something like this because these shadows are of great quality. They're easy to work with. There's a mix of some of those brighter shades, that bright orange and bright red, but there are a lot of very approachable, everyday, more neutral shades. So a palette like this really is going to be great for a few reasons. First and foremost, if you're somebody who's just getting into makeup and you're not ready to invest in a $50+ palette, this is a great way to get some very quality eyeshadows to play with, to work with. Still going to be wearable. You can wear them to work or school, but you can experiment a little bit with some brighter shades as well. Something like this would also be great if you are a very young makeup wearer, a teenager, high schooler. You just don't have the funds to drop on a, $40 something Anastasia palette. This is something that's going to be really budget friendly, and it's still going to give you those on-trend shades that everybody's wearing right now. In that same vein of thought, if you're somebody that you are a makeup lover, you are able to invest a little bit more into your palettes, but you're just not sure if the orange, red, warm trend is for you, a $10 palette is a much better way to figure that out than a $50 something Naked Heat palette. All in all, it's not something that's incredibly unique, absolute must-have in my collection because I am a palette lover, total palette junkie. But that doesn't mean that there's not a place for it in the makeup world. Would I recommend it? Depends on your situation. Maybe yes, maybe you don't need it, but it is a good palette nonetheless. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this new release. I'm always curious to hear how you guys feel about these new palettes too, so leave a comment and let us know. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye. These eyeshadow. Eloquently said. Master of words. Huh? Coffee and lip gloss. Two things I love that don't mix. Let's do some product shots. Shots. Wait, no. It's too early for that. It's like 11:30 in the morning. Calm down. That didn't even make sense. Oh, hold on. Let me check my Instagrams real quick. Obviously, I need more caffeine. It's noon o'clock, and I'm still drinking coffee like my life depends on it. In some ways, it does. You thought I was gonna go for the red-orange look, but I didn't. I switched it up on you. And I went with a mauve-y nude instead of a warm nude. Who am I? Okay, it's not as if I'm like wearing blue eyeshadow and wing liner. Like, calm down. Okay, bye.